From fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Pod Therapy, real people, real problems, and real therapists. You can submit your questions anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. The Facebook event titled Storm Area 51, They Can't Stop Us All, now has over 400,000 names on it.
Holy God.
One important thing to remember before signing up is this simple mathematical formula. The absolute minimum number of people it takes to overthrow a military stronghold is equal to the number of people who will die plus one. And now, broadcasting from the churn, that guy is Dr. Jim Jobin. I'm Nick Tangeman. It's time for some pod therapy.
I have been laughing so hard as I've been watching people sign up for this. And, it's really funny because a lot of people are taking it really serious.
Yeah.
And I'm like, guys, of all the places you think we're keeping the aliens, do you think it's the most famous secret military base in all the world? I'm pretty sure it's the one you've never heard of. Yeah. There's a military base out there that you've never heard of.
Right.
That's where they are.
The other thing, too, and that's probably how the military wants it, too.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah. That's why they don't refute this stuff.
Oh, we got all the secrets here.
Oh,
yeah,
did you guys see another weather balloon at Area 51? Yeah, it's definitely gas. And everyone's like, see, there they are. They're hiding them.
It's literally the military's way of going hey, look over here. Look over here.
Oh,
look
it's
over
just
here.
a decoy. That's all it is. I saw this thing on Reddit the other day. It was a shower thought, and it said, the most successful assassination in world history is the one you've never heard of.
Right.
Or something like that. We've still never heard of the most successful assassin in history.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, I get it. That's how the secret base thing is, too.
But here's the thing, though. They're totally missing the point. They can't stop us all.
The base?
They can't stop us all.
Yes, they can.
No, well, that's not even the point.
Step
that's
one.
Still
Yes,
not,
they can.
That idea is not as important as the idea of how many can they stop.
How many of us will give our lives?
That's much more
so
valuable.
That the survivor can find out.
Right? Yeah, because if the answer to that question is 399,000,
yeah, exactly.
That makes the difference.
That's important. It's funny because if I signed up for that, I would be the dude who's standing there on the freeway with everybody else. Because for those of you who do not know where Area 51 is, it's out here in Nevada,
right.
And they don't even hide it. When you're there, there's a big fat sign that says, lethal force authorized beyond this point. You will be shot.
Yeah.
That's it. You do not cross this point. We're not kidding. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. When everybody lines up at that line on that freeway to run in, I'm going to be the guy that pulls a hammy right then.
Yeah.
And I'm just going, my shoe's untuntied. It's lean down and start tying my shoe while everybody's getting mowed.
Right.
Then I'm going to sprint to the finish.
They see you long before you even get to that sign.
Dude, they were watching you when you woke up that morning. Well, also, in this age, of all you're going to raid a secret base to find out the intergalactic truth of alien life, and you're going to subscribe to it on Facebook?
Yeah, right.
Do you want to do a check-in on Yelp?
Yeah.
Just let them know that you're coming.
Yeah.
Come on. Even if you're the guy that finds out and everybody else gets mowed down and you're the last survivor and you see it, you see little green men, now you got to get back out. Okay? That's pretty tough.
Yeah.
And then you got to get it out there. And they're going to know what your Facebook is. By the time you get back to your computer, that thing's shut down. You don't have a choice. No, if you really found the aliens, dude, you'd get back to your house and it'd be a crater. You'd never have a chance.
All this assuming that there are aliens.
Bro, you don't think that there's aliens? Maybe not at Area 51, but I've seen them. Okay?
Ever on Earth? No. I like.
The galaxy's huge.
We were just talking in. Oh, of course there's aliens. Of course there's life on other galaxies.
Okay.
I mean, statistically, there
You're
has
just
to be.
not here.
Has there ever been any on Earth? No.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing too. This is really funny. We were talking in the pre-show. We were talking about Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yes.
This is another Neil deGrasse Tyson gem.
Yeah.
That he said.
Yeah.
He's you're talking about aliens that would have crashed in Roswell.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, so you're telling me that these aliens crossed thousands of light years to get here, and they couldn't land? He's like, I don't want to meet those aliens.
They're not even impressed.
Yeah, I'm not impressed.
You crashed in New Mexico where there was nothing to hit?
Yeah.
Of all the places?
That was the same issue.
Fell on the ground?
That was the same problem I had with watching Transformers 2.
Oh, okay.
The movie, because Megatron supposedly crashed in the Arctic.
Yeah, and you're like, come on.
I'm like, yeah, he got all the way here and he crashed there. What?
Yeah, that's where you landed. Yeah, wasn't in a major metropolitan area. Right. It was Antarctica, the bottom of the world. Right. Got it. The only uninhabited continent that there is. Got it. Yeah, I'm with you. I think definitely aliens. I'm probably not on team they've shown up here. I feel like, I don't know, probably not. If they did, I do think it would be kept secret though. But I don't know how effectively. Because, stuff leaks all the time. Yeah. Like, the President of the United States is there's a report basically just saying, here's all the crimes he committed. Yeah. And, he ordered them not to say that. Right. He would very much like that information to never see the light of day. And it's out there. We all know. He slept with a hooker. Right. She's famous. I think there's lots of things he would prefer to cover up above the aliens. And also, if anything ended the aliens are in America theory for me, it was Donald Trump getting elected. If there was one dude who just would have told you to be the guy to do it, it was him. There is no way he has the deference and the stern, solemn judgment to say humanity's not ready for the bull. Dude, he'd have been on an infomercial the next day. He would have asked to know. There's no way. So that ended the aliens discussion for me. But anyway. Well, we have questions. We have shows to do. So the first question has nothing to do with aliens, believe it or not. It has to do with body issues. Here's the letter. I have always had body issues, but as I have grown up, I have become more comfortable and accepting of my appearance. The problem is, my husband is not. He makes a lot of comments about my appearance and makes me feel self-conscious. I play sports 2 to 3 times a week, I eat relatively well, and overall have a clean bill of health. I've tried to explain the effect the comments have, but he feels it should be motivation to get better. How do I help him understand how hurtful his words are? Anonymous.
Yeah, this one bothered me.
Did? Yeah. Tell me why.
Did you too as well? Because
I see it from both sides, and that's where I think I get stuck in it. So let's start with you.
Here's the thing that bothered me.
Yeah,
is the idea that one person in this relationship is saying some pretty hurtful things. It sounds like.
Yeah,
and with the idea that this should motivate you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, once you know that it's not.
Yeah.
Then it's done.
Stop. Yeah, you've tried.
There's nothing else to do.
Locked.
It's not. You don't repeat it and then be like, maybe if I try harder,
maybe if I draw a mean picture of you.
It's not motivating at 50%. So let's crank it up to 80% and see if it's motivating.
Yeah, the problem must have been you didn't hear me. Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
And so I think that's the thing that really bothers me. And how do you get somebody to understand that?
Yeah. That's true. I've seen it where it's both ways. So, obviously I'm not taking the side of the husband. I don't like to see people be mean. I don't think that that's effective. And yet I have sat with the person, whether it's a man or a woman, who is the spouse, who wants something to change and who feels that they have communicated that and is out of options. And so they're resorting to other ways, right? They are being hurtful. And I've even had couples that are conscious of that and are like, I have asked, I have tried. The other person poo-poos this or comes up with excuses or says, what do you mean I don't look attractive? I play sports. And it's like, if you read the letter carefully, that's a categorical mistake. That you're in good health, that you play sports does not invalidate your partner's criticism. If your partner's telling you there's a physical attractiveness thing that I want to address as a couple, if they can say that in a useful way, I would want both members of the couple to want to talk about that, right? Okay. But at the same time, in this case, the husband is weaponizing that. It's an unhelpful way, and just cranking up the volume on the insult isn't going to be helpful at all.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm for couples communication, right? If somebody's saying, hey, I don't like your hair like that. Can we talk about this? Or hey, you got some grays. Are you willing to dye it? And what are you talking about? I have grays. I'm 45 years old. And it's yeah, I know that age-wise, biologically, you're not old, but you appear this way. Are you willing to work on it? There needs to be room for a couple to talk about physical appearance without that being an off-limits subject, is what I'm saying.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
I'm not defending how he did it. I'm defending it's a fair topic to discuss as a couple.
So how much influence do you think one person should have over the other person as far as attractiveness?
It's a good question, right? Because this enters into an area that we both agree has to do with your own individual sovereignty over your own body.
Right.
And I think both of us would agree you've entered into a couple's relationship and your appearance is their business. They're the only other human, if you're in a monogamous relationship, who really has permission to say how you're carrying yourself or what you're doing, whether you're bathing, your hygiene. This affects me, and it's something I deserve to be heard out on. Right. Don't you think that both are simultaneously true?
Yes, and it is a gray area. Because I can think of extremes on both ends.
Yes.
Where I can think of one person in a relationship saying, I don't like your hair that way. You need to cut it, or you need to change it. Or you can't change your hair. You can't change your hairstyle.
Yeah.
You have to keep it that way. I see that on one extreme.
Yes.
But then I also see on the other extreme where it's like, you haven't showered in 4 days.
Right.
And that does have an effect in our intimacy and our relationship.
And then the other, how dare you?
Right. This is my body, and I have the right to not shower.
You chauvinist pig.
Right. Yes, right. You do have that right.
Right.
But everything has a consequence or an effect.
Yes.
But I don't know. I think this is a really tough one.
It is a tough one.
It can very easily be abused, and I think it just goes back to this idea of if what he's saying is hurtful and it's harmful.
Yes.
And then I also think, like, what are the other long-term effects of this going to be?
Yes.
Who's seeing this? Are there children at home?
Right.
Are they seeing this? Are they learning about what an adult relationship is by watching him talk to her this way?
And what's the after effect, too? Because, like, this goes back to reverse psychology and paradoxical injunctions. The least likely way to get somebody to do that, to change their physical appearance, is to insult them.
Right.
Oh, now I really want to look pretty for you.
Yeah.
Let me go put on some makeup. Come on. Like, that's never going to happen, right? So it's the same thing. But to me, the real heart and soul of this question is not the legitimacy of the topic. To me, it's the ineffectiveness of the communication. That the writer is saying, this hurt me.
Right.
How do I tell my husband, this is hurting me? It's not going to get you the results that you want. And that you and I are very used to. Families, couples, having a conversation with us about how they tell somebody what their need is or something that they want to change in the relationship, which even in substance abuse land, we've seen this a million times. How do I communicate my desire in an effective way to get the result? Right? And that becomes a solution-focused kind of conversation, I think. But I don't know. I think that that's the real heart of the question to me.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And I think to answer that question, how do you make him understand that? I think I think you just have to say that. And if he doesn't understand that, then I don't know where you really go from there. I mean, that's just kind of it, right? I mean, you have to explain, like, look, when you say this hurts.
Yes.
And it doesn't motivate me to make changes. Motivate and maybe explain what it does motivate. It causes me to want to withdraw. It causes me to want to avoid you. It causes me to just feel like I'm kind of checking out.
Yeah, and I think here's the answer to your question, writer. This, for me, if you were my patient or if this couple was on my couch, I would be trying to teach them that effective communication style of I feel when you, right?
Yes.
And so that's the building blocks of getting messages understood. And I'd start with the wife in this case, assuming that she identifies as female. I mean, I get that impression anyway. But for the writer to be able to say to her husband, listen, I feel insecure and ugly and unwanted and ashamed and hurt and angry when you tell me that you want me to lose weight or be more tone or whatever. I don't receive it as genuine interest in me, or genuine, like, sincere concern for my health or even an encouragement. You're not uplifting me and helping me be the best version of me. I just feel hurt by that.
Right.
And then to have the husband in this case repeat that back to her, okay, Becky, I hear you saying these things when I do that. Here's what I'm trying to convey, right? So I would want you guys to have a more dynamic, feelings-based conversation. The problem with conversations like this on this topic, they too quickly try to appear objective. They either try to say, you are objectively unhealthy, and every 9 out of 10 dentists agree with me that you need to go to the gym, and I don't like that. Or we try to be overly subjective and say, I'm not attracted to you anymore. It's a problem. You need to fix it. And I want it to get to a place where we're hearing the feelings behind the thought. So to the writer, I would want you to sit down with your spouse and lead with the feeling, not qualifying whether their statement is accurate like you did in your letter to us. Mm-hmm. To us, you wrote, hey, guys, I play ball. I work out. I'm healthy. That's fine. You're engaging the objective qualities of the spouse's argument. I don't want you to do that. I want you to start with your feeling. How does it feel? Do not qualify whether it's true or false. Just start with your feeling, and if you can get them to understand that, then they may communicate, okay, but how do I communicate this to you? Okay, fine. That's a different conversation than the hurtful way that it's currently happening in.
Right. So let's say they do that. We've addressed the communication part.
Yes.
Here's the other part to this, which is she writes in here she's comfortable accepting her appearance.
Yes.
He is not.
What do they do with that?
Right.
What if they just land on impasse? Can't fix this. I accept my body the way it is. I hope you do too. And then the spouse saying, I really don't. This is a problem.
Yeah.
Therapy.
Yeah.
That's
I
when
think
I want you in
mean,
couples therapy. That needs to be resolved.
Right.
There's going to have to be a deeper conversation about needs because, and that's something I just want to be careful because in the age that we are in right now of people becoming hypersensitive and hyper offended at everything, we are denying people permission to have opinions about other people in this very intimate and sexual way. So when it comes to sex or when it comes to physical appearance, it is inherently biologically untrue that your appearance does not affect your spouse.
Sure.
We know that empirically. But in a PC culture, we deny that that's a valid conversation to have. That gets so far away from being productive that as a therapist, I don't want to enter into that just intellectual dishonesty. I don't want it to go there. I want us to be able to have this conversation. But I also respect that most couples can't have it in a useful way. And so they may need some guidance, and that's where an outsider really might be the right answer.
Yeah, I agree. I think maybe that's kind of where this is going, because even if you address the communication thing, that's still, I think, the underlying issue. I think those are both really important issues that need to be worked out.
But to the writer, telling him in feeling words rather than qualifying the fact of his argument, I think is the most useful thing. And if you guys landed on impasse, you really should go see a couples therapist for this. This definitely falls inside the realm of things that you want to go ahead and get on early rather than having this be some simmering resentment. It's going to affect your sex life. It's going to affect your love for each other. It's going to affect your affections for each other. It's going to affect your self-esteem. There's a lot of high risk here, and I don't want to see that happen.
Definitely. All right, well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will discuss coping with a terminal illness. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
This week's TheraProducer sponsor is David Datascoop Vielan. Datascoop was a Dutch physicist, mathematician, astronomer, and inventor who was widely regarded as one of the greatest scientists of all time and a major figure in the scientific revolution. In physics, Datascoop made groundbreaking contributions in optics and mechanics, while as an astronomer, he is chiefly known for his studies of the rings of Saturn. Wow. And the discovery of the moon Titan. Dude, do you know that we're going to send a flying drone to Titan?
I did not.
NASA's doing it. It's really cool. It's like a little chopper thing. It's like an octocopter. It's really cool. Anyway, back to Datascoop. As an inventor, he improved the design of the telescope with the invention of the Vielan eyepiece. Nice job. Yep. That must mean that eyepiece really has the person's name in it. His most famous invention, however, was the invention of the pendulum clock. Oh, it's Dr. Pendulum. Got it.
No, it's Dr. Clock.
Got it. Oh, Dr. Clock, of course. Oh, I'm such an idiot. In 1656, which was the breakthrough of timekeeping, and became the most accurate timekeeper for almost 300 years. Because of this first use of mathematical formulae to describe laws of physics, Datascoop has been called the first theoretical physicist and the founder of mathematical physics. I think I know who it is. I kind of want to take a shot at it, but I kind of don't. You know what? Let's put it on Patreon.
Yeah,
all right.
Okay.
If you think you know who it is, go to patreon.com/therapy and sign up and give us your answer as a comment beneath this episode, and you will win nothing except Jim's respect. And maybe I'll get it wrong and you'll get it right. Yeah, it's always a fun thing too. We're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy, and our next question is about confronting terminal illness. My husband was diagnosed with incurable cancer several months ago. He has, at best, 2 or 3 years left. He's only 41 and has always been totally healthy, and we have 5 young children. So the news was a huge shock. Over time, we've settled into this new reality, but it's really hard because so much is uncertain, and we've all been devastated by this. He went through some really low, difficult times and had bouts of overwhelming anxiety in the first 2 months, and although he's been doing a little better since then, he is still struggling. His oncologist prescribed antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds, which he refuses to take. I've encouraged him to try therapy, but he refuses that too. So I've been trying to just be here for him as best as I can. As he frequently points out, though, there's no way for me to truly understand what he's going through, because I'm not dying of cancer. Recently, he has been apologizing to me for being sick, for putting all the burden of caring for our family on me, and for eventually leaving me alone and widowed at a young age with 5 little ones. I tell him that I love him, and always will, and that the kids and I will be okay. And when I said in good times and bad, and in sickness and in health, this is what I meant. But he doesn't seem to believe me. I suggested having a small vow renewal ceremony while we're at the beach with our children this summer, but he said no, and that he wishes I hadn't married him, because then I wouldn't have to go through all this and whatever is coming over the next couple of years. What can I do here to help him, guys? I love him and want so badly to help him, at the very least to draw comfort from our relationship while he's going through this unimaginable experience. But I can't seem to get through. I don't know what else to say to him. Thank you for any suggestions or insights you can provide. Anonymous.
Yeah, this one, I saw this one come through in our email, and we're just kind of now getting to it because we're kind of behind, but this has been one that I've been thinking a lot about, because this is a tough one. There's just nothing. What do you say? I mean, I think there's a few things that stuck out to me in this that I want to kind of give some feedback and throw my thoughts out there on.
Yeah.
Number one, I think in this situation, it can be very easy to be hurt by some of the things that are being said, right? Some of the things like, him making some comment about wishing he hadn't married her, that can be hurtful, but I also kind of understand, where that's coming from. It's coming from a place of caring and wishing that the situation was better or situation was different and that you didn't have to go through all this. So in really stressful situations, where it feels like there's no way out, people often can say things that can come off very hurtful. The other thing too that I'm hearing the writer talk about is feeling like or him pointing out that you don't know what this is like because you're not dying of cancer, and I mean vice versa.
Right.
She could easily make the argument you don't know
what it's like to watch
somebody die
the father of your children,
right. And I think
powerless.
Ultimately, with that, one of the thoughts that I had is, I think we put too much emphasis on understanding.
Yeah.
Ultimately, in therapy, when people do better, it's a result of them doing something different that leads to a better outcome.
Yeah.
Sometimes that behavior change is a result of an understanding change, but not always.
Yes.
There can be behavior change that can lead to better outcomes without understanding the specifics, the ins and outs, and I get this a lot as working with drug addicts and alcoholics,
yes,
and saying,
absolutely.
well, you don't know what this is like because you're not an alcoholic or an addict.
Right.
And my usual response to that is, you're right.
I
don't.
Yes.
And I'm also not trying to understand.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, the success that you find in recovery is not going to be based off of my understanding. It's going to be based off of you finding a way of living in a behavior change that's going to work for you and that's going to produce outcomes.
I agree.
Neither of our understandings is going to have a bit of impact.
No.
So there's one thing I will say, though. I think it's going to be very important for you, the listener, to seek some help with this. Get into therapy yourself.
Yes.
There's no right or wrong way to do this. There's no handbook of, here's the step-by-step process of how you deal with being diagnosed with a terminal illness.
No.
And ultimately, I think the person who has that diagnosis is kind of in the driver's seat.
They are.
And whatever is going to work for them and whatever they think is going to be the best way to deal with this, then I think they kind of have that right to make those determinations, as long as the decisions they're making aren't causing bigger problems.
Yes.
Which can happen sometimes with denial.
Yes.
Denial to some degree is okay until it starts interfering with progress or getting help. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think on that point, you're still in a very early phase of this. So one thing, writer, that I would probably want you to just refresh yourself about is the 7 stages of grief. I think, is it 5, Nick, or is it 7?
5.
I'm looking it up right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It's the 5 stages of grief. So the 5 stages of grief, I think, are very important in this because it helps you sort of have a roadmap for accepting a situation that is unacceptable, to basically reach a place where you can look into the depths of death itself and reach something. And so really quickly, here's the 5 stages. It starts with denial. Now, I don't hear that either of you is in that place right now. You guys have looked into this matter. You've gotten second opinions. At this stage, it sounds like both of you are accepting that this is the eventual outcome. The second stage is anger. I'm hearing a little bit about that. I don't know if you detected it, Nick, but in the letter, I detect a little bit of anger, from the husband toward the wife. This frustration of like, you don't understand,
right.
Pushing away a little bit.
Probably some resentment.
You don't know you're not dying of cancer. Like,
right.
Why me kind of thing.
And one thing I want to point out, too, is that resentment, I think, is normal on both sides.
Yes.
Both parties resent the other party for the situation.
Yes.
And it doesn't have... The other thing that's really important is that it doesn't have to be logical.
No.
Right? Resentment doesn't have to be logical.
No.
You can experience this.
Yeah, it doesn't make you a bad person.
Yeah, this is a normal
writer,
thing.
That's something I want you to acknowledge. It's okay that you are angry at your husband right now. Even if you're also petrified, terrified, brokenhearted for him, it's possible for all these things to exist at the same time. And so it's possible that maybe you're experiencing anger right now. The other stages are bargaining, and that's whenever we feel like we could maybe find a way, or maybe like get good karma, or like somehow make a deal here that we can get through this. Then depression usually, and then acceptance. Now, I don't see these stages of grief as linear. I tend to see them not as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but as phases that we kind of swish back and forth into, and then usually land into acceptance. What you're going through, what your husband is going through, requires grieving. And that process itself is muddy and painful, and it's also something that you cannot prevent him from going through. And so one of the things I'm hearing you say in your letter is how frustrating it is for you to want to give him peace, to want to heal him, to want to soothe him, and to be completely incapable of that at this time. Listen, I relate to you in that sense. As a therapist, I have had a couple, this was years ago, where a member of the couple had terminal cancer. And it was very challenging, I think, for me. And I wasn't even married to this couple, but it was very powerful for me to be their hired helper and to have absolutely no relief in my pocket for them, to have no ability to steal their fear, to give them anything that would have been useful, to take away that grieving process. And you must feel equally powerless to try to make this thing go away or to take away a percentage of it. Your job, writer, is to be present. That's what I want you to be. I want you to be present. I want you to be available. I want you to be present. I want you to authentically go through your own grieving process. There's going to be times when you and your husband can talk about this in a transparent, kind of candid way. There's going to be times when neither of you can. There's going to be times whenever you need somebody to talk to and he's not going to be the one. And there's going to be times when he needs somebody to talk to and you're not going to be the one. It's because even though you're in this together and even though you are the only ones who can relate to each other to some extent, you're also, in another sense, connected by this pain. He sees you as another victim, and he sees himself as the perpetrator of that. You see him as sort of this accidental victim, and you feel a sense of survivor's guilt and remorse that you're going to continue on and not know what comes next. There is such a convoluted constellation of connections between you, especially with the children. It's just important that you give yourself permission to grieve, you give him space and permission to grieve as well, that you are physically present. And the last thought I'll offer you on this issue of grieving and how to do it, I think, correctly and completely. And I don't know if we've talked about this on the show before, Nick. Maybe you'll remember me saying this. But there is an ancient Hebrew principle that applies in this situation, and it has to do with grieving. And it's a practice that they call Shiva. And during Shiva, when a person is in pain and grieving, members of their family, friends, they will sit in the room with them and be present in their pain. And they will imagine, just for the sake of utility, that the grief is a black plume of fire smoke coming out of this person. And by sitting in their presence and just breathing the smoke in, you're not taking it from them and you're not putting the fire out, but you're making it so there's a little less smoke to go around. You're participating in the sorrow. You're there to receive it. And that's what I mean by practicing presence with your husband. Just being present. And, I want to echo lastly what Nick said. There is no question that you guys need to be getting into therapy for this. Even if your husband's unwilling, you need to, and your children need to as well.
Right. One last tip I would throw in as well. If you start, getting in and doing some of your own research with this, one term that I would encourage you to look up is what's called anticipatory grief.
Yes. Good catch.
Yes, because just talking about grief in general is too broad, and you're going to get a lot of stuff that's not going to fit to your specific suffering. What you are experiencing is anticipatory grief.
Yes.
And there's a lot of really good articles and material out there under that search heading. So as you go in and start kind of doing your own research, plug that in. That's going to help.
And there will be a support group that's connected to your oncology clinic, or they can point you in the right direction. And listen, writer, there is nothing we can do or say that is going to ultimately give you peace and give your husband peace to be free of this. You are facing the scariest thing that humans can face.
Yeah, this is probably my biggest fear ever.
This is it. This is the tippy top.
Yeah.
Now, as a parent, I don't know these people. I don't think all parents relate with what I'm about to say. Some do. I don't know this couple. Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. My biggest fear is my children being hurt.
Right.
Whenever Viktor Frankl who's the writer of Man's Search for Meaning and the author of Logotherapy, he survived the Holocaust, and he was put in a concentration camp. And he talked about how one of the ways that he saw people overcome this incredible sadness and fear and destiny of death was imagining that there was a purpose to it. That for some of them, they were suffering, but their children escaped. And that somehow they would imagine that by suffering and being put through this process and even dying, they were sparing their children something. For your husband to go through this in a very real way, I suppose he could allow himself to take some comfort in knowing that though he is going to pass and though that is not going to benefit the family, it's not his children going through it. Mm-hmm. And I know for me, that is, I don't want to ever face my own death. One day I guess we all will. Mm-hmm. To me, I've almost imagined it, Nick, as a benefit. Like, I'm a guy who hopes there's a God. That I have no evidence. I hope there is. That'd be great. I think, unless I pissed him off. But when I imagine myself talking to that God, I imagine myself asking two things. One, spare my children. If ever death has to come, I'll take it, and I drink that cup gladly. But secondly, sometimes I imagine which would be better, to know that you're going to die or to have it happen quickly. For me personally, I think it'd actually be to know that I'm going to die, because then I would have the opportunity to tell the people I love how much I loved them, to say my goodbyes. And in so many ways, that's such a gift. Whether you believe in a higher power, whether you believe in a heaven or a hell, whether you don't believe there's anything. If you see time as a commodity, it's a gift in some ways, to know the day and the hour that you will die, even if that's a ballpark figure. In some ways, there's some beauty in this.
Sure.
But I don't expect anybody to see that yet.
Right. Yeah, that's probably a little early for that.
Yeah.
But
good luck. This is going to be a really hard thing for you to do. But reach out, get help.
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely encourage you to get into therapy on your own. There's going to be a lot of stuff. And actually, Lori Gottlieb, who we were doing
there's a chapter in her book about this.
Well, half of the book. I mean, one of the clients that she's talking to is somebody who has a terminal illness and is going through, not that as a family member, but she does talk a lot about the relationship in that marriage and how that affects the marriage. And it's interesying to look at
because they were newlyweds. Yeah.
Right,
they wanted to have kids. Yeah.
Right, and actually, I think they weren't. Oh yeah, they were
when they first met.
Newlyweds, and to kind of look at how Lori handled that situation, as a therapist, it's really astonishing, amazing.
Yeah, so and instructive too.
Yeah,
definitely recommend picking up. Maybe you should talk to somebody by Lori Gottlieb.
And if you can get into therapy yourself, I think that would just be incredibly helpful.
It would. Thank you so much for writing in, and good luck.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will talk about fear about what your therapist thinks of you. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
This week's Theraproducer sponsor is Judy Schneider. Judy Schneider is a retired Soviet aviator and cosmonaut who flew aboard Soyuz T-7 in 1982, becoming the second woman in space. On this day in 1984, she became the first woman to fly to space twice and the first woman to perform a spacewalk. Wow, that's a really good one.
On this day, so on Thursday.
Yes, when this airs. Wow, you even got it right. Look at you.
Good job, Judy.
If you'd like to join Judy by sponsoring the show, you can go to patreon.com/therapy and sign up. Again, that's patreon.com/therapy.
We're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy. Our next question is about, I'm fearful about what my therapist thinks of me.
So before we do this, I've met a Russian cosmonaut. I've really met a real one.
Really?
Isn't that cool? Because back when I was a kid, my parents owned a pen store. That's how they made their living. They sold pens. And the pen that they mostly sold was a space pen. It's actually the pen that the astronauts still take up into space missions because it has a pressurized ink refill, so it can write. And the ink is very thick. It's like chewing gum, so it doesn't spray everywhere. And so this is the same pen that they've used in the original moon missions and stuff like that. And there's actually a really good documentary right now talking about the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11.
Right.
And a lot of people don't know this, but when Neil and Buzz were on the moon, at one point they were shuffling around and one of their bags, their packs, their air tank, broke off a switch in the lunar module. It was the engine arming switch. They would still be on the moon up to now if Neil Armstrong had not reached into his pocket, pulled out his space pen, it was an AG-7 space pen, and retracted the point and slid the pen into the mechanism and flicked the switch manually. Isn't that crazy? He had to surgically do it. Anyway, I met a cosmonaut because my parents had a space pen store, and for a promotion once, they got a hold of this cosmonaut and paid him to come out to the mall and shake hands and sign autographs. And he came back to our house for barbecue. So I met him.
So you have Russian ties.
Yeah. Oh, shit.
That's what I'm hearing you say. Yeah, we can edit that out.
Oh, God.
We won't, but we could.
Well, okay. What are you saying? I should be the President of the United States? Hi-oh!
I'm saying you're closer to being President of the United States because of all that.
All right, probably just about as close as I am to the moon. Okay, this question is, I'm fearful about what my therapist thinks of me. Hello, Jim and Nick. It's your old pal Jeff writing you, hey Jeff, with a problem that has nothing to do with my stupid, crazy relationship issues. So, I recently started seeing a therapist. Yay! And her office is kind of funny. See, she has a room in the back of a house that doubles as a chiropractic clinic that's owned by somebody else. There's also a real estate company in the adjacent building connected by some stairs. Now, the whole building has a lot of spiritual things in it. Religious quotes on the walls by the chiropractic bed, Jesus pictures, and lots of crystals and essential oils and woo stuff in the lobby area. It's so funny because when we were eating sushi the other day, you and I were talking about this. Exactly this.
Yeah.
That's so funny. My therapist's office itself is devoid of anything decorative, really save for a pyramid on a desk and the wicker chairs I sit in. In our second or third session, we discussed my views on religion, and I told her about my father, the Pastafarian, and I had to explain to her what that was, which was hilarious. Then I went into my being an atheist, and she didn't say anything. But I have this annoying fear that she thinks less of me or finds me annoying. Like she filed me away in her mind as a type of person, even though she didn't say or do anything to give credence to that. In fact, she has repeatedly told me that there's no judgment here, but I feel like there might be. So I guess my question to you guys is, how does one deal with these paranoid thoughts of what their therapist thinks of them? And what do you guys think of your own patients? Do you find some of them awful or annoying? That's a good one. Thanks a ton for all your work, Salt Pork. Jeffrey H. Ackerman, The Scoops of War. That one's really
Thanks
good.
for writing in, Jeff.
I like that question. That's fun.
This is... I've actually had some patients ask me this before. Like, what do you think of me?
Right.
And...
That's funny.
Yeah, I mean, and... Because that is a real deal. Like, people are really concerned and really afraid. You know, the value that people put on what their therapist thinks of them is very high.
Well, Lori Gottlieb, again to reference her book, I loved that part of her book. Her being the patient
Yeah.
and wondering what her therapist thinks
Yeah.
of her.
Yeah.
Is she more exciting to listen to than the next guy?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That was really funny.
And that's true. Like, I mean, we don't. I think we get into the mindset of not really paying any attention to it because it's not on our radar at all. But for our patients, it is something they really think about.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, I'll give you my take on this, Jeffrey. So pretty much all my work in the last 17 years has been working with addicts and alcoholics.
God, you are so old. Sorry, go on.
Anyway, and a very traditionally difficult population to work with.
Yes.
I usually don't see people who are internally motivated to make big changes.
No.
It's almost always folks that are externally motivated that are there to get somebody off their back, and they don't come in the best moods because they're withdrawing from whatever substance.
Early recovery?
Oh my
mean.
God, it's ugly. They are mean.
Selfish.
They're vicious.
Oh, yeah.
It's like,
poor me,
it's
victimized.
Honestly, it's about, it kind of feels like working with rabid wolverines.
Yeah.
It's kind of what it feels
or
like.
Or running a daycare. That's what rehab was like. It's like running a daycare. Yeah.
And even in those terrible situations,
right,
I never had a bad opinion of them.
No, yeah,
there weren't
true.
people in there that I was just like, God, I cannot stand this guy.
Yeah,
and I think part of it just comes with being a decent therapist.
Right.
If you are a decent therapist, you understand that you are seeing the most vulnerable parts of people,
yes,
and you're seeing them at their worst.
That's
a lot of times.
Yeah,
and we all understand that we are not summed up by our worst moments.
Correct.
So I can speak for myself, and I can speak for pretty much all the therapists that I know.
Yeah.
We don't really think of it that way, and we don't really, even if we're having a challenging client, we generally just, we don't think, man, that person's an asshole.
Right.
Most of the time we think, man, that person's been through a lot.
Yes. Yeah, I think how you just said it is totally right. And it's funny because I definitely want to speak to this idea of atheism specifically, right, because obviously Jeff isn't describing a situation where he actually is or has done something that would be objectionable. He just feels insecure about it. He feels paranoid. But his deeper question is like, hey, generally, do you guys, what's your opinion about people? I agree with Nick, and I think I would say it another way. A plastic surgeon probably has never seen a person whose face is so despised by him that he refuses to operate. He's a professional face changer. He's good with it. That's what he's there to do. So we have met rapists. We have met murderers. We have met people who have done really terrible things. Our training absolutely comes back to bringing us to the shared humanity we have with the patient. And so even though we may object to what they have done, we are on a rescue mission to help reform who they are. Mm-hmm. And that requires an incurable optimism and appreciation. We call this in therapy, and this is a true term, for all of our grad students out there, they know what we're talking about. It's called unconditional positive regard. Mm-hmm. And it is the very first principle we have as therapists is that we must always have unconditional positive regard for our patient. And that means that even if there's something about you that we object to, we still affirm and unconditionally regard positively your humanity and your personhood. Mm-hmm. We might be trying to help you change or think about certain things, of course, but we still like you, Jeff. Now, having said that, I must be a bad therapist because I have had patients that I do not like. That doesn't mean I'm not here to serve them, right? Like, I think of myself as part of the healthcare system. And so if you're the guy who just shot a cop, but he shot you back, and I'm a surgeon, and my job is to pull a bullet out of you, I might not be thrilled about, everything that you are, and I might not like that you're screaming in my ear and you don't like me. But I'm going to pull that bullet out, right? Right. So we have an ethical responsibility to treat somebody, even if we may not like them. And we do have an ethical responsibility to at least appear agreeable, like we do like them. And I can say that for the hour that I'm with somebody, or the 50 minutes that I'm with somebody, I hope that I'm effective. But yes, in my entire career, especially at the rehab, I have had a few that I just thought, you know what, you're better served by another therapist. And I will admit that in those situations, I have collaborated with a colleague and I've handed that person off for their benefit because I don't feel that I'm the best choice for them.
Have you ever done that for religious reasons?
No.
Right.
No. So that actually gives us a good pivot to the nature of his real question. So it's funny because I have a client that I've seen, I think, in the last 12 months. This was something that they brought up. Or they didn't bring it up. I did. Because they know that I'm religious. Because they've heard the show. And so they're aware that I'm a religious guy. And I don't even know if the word religious counts. I'm religious. I'm somewhere in there.
Depends on what
day it is. Yeah. How much trouble I'm in. It depends on how tight the cuffs are. It's a directly inverse relationship to how much I'm praying. But this patient, a great person. I love this person. And I knew that this person was an atheist because of the other podcast that they listened to. And so I was like, okay, cool, so we were chatting about it. And one day I brought it up, and the person I could tell was really uncomfortable, and I could tell it wasn't uncomfortable as a topic. They were comfortable with their perspective. They were fearful that it was going to create a wedge between us, and I could tell that they were artificially representing their thoughts, and I was trying to assure them, like, no, in no way is this topic about me giving you ideas or trying to convince you to a side. Part of my job is to know you and to learn you. Your atheism, in this particular person's case, is important to you. It's a value of yours. And it serves you. It's something that, it's not just a casual thought you have. Like, you're into it. You align with it. It's how you also enjoy entertainment and things like that. So, yeah, I want to understand you. But I found that it was an area that I could sense that they were worried that I was going to draw conclusions about them in much the same way that Jeff did. Right. And so, Jeff, speaking from the therapist chair, no, we're not thinking anything about that. Religion is one of the most common things that we're going to have diverse opinions on. Politics. I've had patients. Most folks that listen to my show or this show know that I'm progressive, and I've had patients that if you ask them, they'll tell you, "Oh, Jim is hardcore libertarian conservative." Not because I've ever said anything that is, but they feel so accepted by me, and they'll go on about Rush Limbaugh or whatever they're into. They would never guess that that's not how I'm going to vote. Right. But I still like you. We're good. I don't think anything less of you, even though we're on different sides of the line.
Yeah, I would agree. And I've had similar situations like that as far as political situations. I had one guy that was just going on and on one time about Trump and how amazing he was talking to me.
Oh, I have that all week long.
I was voting for him too.
Yeah.
And you just kind of like, all right.
Cool.
So anyway, about this other thing,
we're interested. We're interested. If you're enthusiastic about it, if you're passionate about it, cool.
Right.
And the fact that we're not openly disagreeing with you doesn't mean that we're judging you either.
Right.
Because we know you for your deep humanity. We don't know you as the red hat wearing guy. We know you as the human with a name and a story. And we're so interested in you that we can't help but see the fullness of your humanity, not just a particular opinion with which we might not share.
I guess ultimately at the end of the day, it really boils down to the idea that if your therapist is competent and they recognize that it affects their ability to treat you, they will hand you off to somebody else.
Yeah, or I've even seen therapists who have brought it up. Not in a combative way, but in this assisting the therapeutic relationship kind of way, where they'll say, does it make you uncomfortable to know that, yes, there's a Jesus picture over here. Does that make you uncomfortable? Is that okay for us? Do you want to ask me anything? Is there anything that would clear the air between us?
The Jesus picture is fine. I don't understand why it has to be naked. That bothers me a little bit.
Well, it's an Advent calendar.
While we're talking about your office.
It's the swimsuit edition of the Advent calendar. You gotta have it. It only comes out once a year. Yeah. There's candies.
It's not even a picture of him on the cross. It's a picture of him getting out of the shower. I don't understand.
He's got a towel on.
Why do you have that in here?
It's not obscene. Because he has washed away the sins of man.
Well, I get the metaphor.
With Irish Spring. So anyway, Jeff, listen, man, a competent therapist doesn't care. But you know what?
I guess I would assume it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
You're not the first person that's ever walked in their office.
Exactly.
Even if they are religious.
But if it matters to you, Jeffrey, feel free to bring it up.
Yes, feel free to bring it up. And you know what? When you're shopping for a therapist, you'll actually notice a lot of us will reveal if we have a religious background or if we are atheists or something like that. And that is to put you at ease. So that's, most of the time, we don't care. You know, you can come in with whatever. But that's so that you feel, if it matters to you, we don't want to create a barrier for you, right? So that's pretty common. But one thing that he said in here that I kind of imagined, and I want to get your feedback on this, Nick, there's times, you know how, like, I'm very affirming in therapy, like, my style is always, like, even on...
Annoyingly so.
Annoyingly, yeah, affirming. Like, Will and Manu were making fun of me because I'm like, yes. And I'm like that in therapy, too. Like, I'm very much
I
like...
imagine.
Oh, yeah. You know, I'm with the person and affirming everything. But there are times when I noticeably do not nod. I do not say yeah. I do not affirm. And I notice, because I so naturally do that when I don't, it's conspicuous. And I don't do that whenever you have said something detrimental to yourself. If you say, like, anyway, you know, I'm so fat or whatever, I will not go, yeah. Like, I get it. You know, like, I will just be like, I'll just receive the comment, like, I heard you. But I'm not going to affirm that or support that, right? Or if you say something that I know I can't, it isn't that I can't affirm it, it's that it's unproductive for me to do so. So, like, the guy who talks about, like, Rush Limbaugh and is like, oh, yeah, you know, he's the best. I'm not going to go, yeah, isn't he? Because that'd be inauthentic.
Right.
And I don't want to lie to you. I'm not comfortable lying to you that I would listen to Rush Limbaugh, but I'm not angry at what you're talking about. I'm just receiving it. But I'm noticeably not in the same, like, enthusiastic affirmation mode because I feel like that would be misleading to you. But it's not because I disapprove of you or disapprove of your position. It's just I don't want to be deceptive.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so, like, sometimes, like, I could see it in Jeff's case. Like, if he said, so I'm an atheist, I go, okay.
Yeah. Cool. I mean, for me,
but I wouldn't go, yeah, right, awesome. Like, I'd be like, I don't care, you know, it's irrelevant to me.
There's a couple different techniques that you can use in this situation. One of them is the Jacob technique.
Great.
Fine.
The Jacob Smith approach, as it's called in the academy.
Right.
Yeah. Great.
The life coach that we all have.
Yeah.
My
favorite life coach. God, I'm going to make those cards.
But no, then there's this other thing too, which is I can't remember who. I want to say it was like an Ericksonian technique, but it's called the head tilt.
Yeah.
Where when you say something that the client says something that is kind of negative, and it could be something directed towards you, but it becomes unproductive to explore it.
Yes.
You kind of do the head tilt, where your head just goes off to kind of one side, and you imagine this statement going right by whizzing past your ear, and it just keeps going.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the approach that I always take when I train new clinicians. Mm-hmm. I talk about the clinical session is almost kind of like being a tennis match, where you have to communicate to somebody on their side of the court. They've got a tennis ball, they've got a hockey puck, they've got a baseball, they've got a football, a basketball, all these things, and you have to communicate to them which is the appropriate ball to be using, but you can't talk about it. So what you do is you'll just let them hit things over,
and then you'll volley back the ones that are good.
The tennis ball, then you hit that back.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, hockey puck, I'm going to let that go.
Yes.
And then you only hit back the ones that are relevant. Right?
Yes. And you know what? I like how you illustrate that, because I think that's what I was trying to say earlier about, like, affirming and then not. I think that the first time I said that, it might have given some listeners the impression that I disagree with your opinion, and so I'm not affirming it, and you should notice that vacancy. That's not what I mean. What I really mean is what you just said. If it's a productive, not the Jacob, that's dismissive. I mean your equipment thing. Like, if it's something that I can volley back, but you know what, I still do, though, because I don't care. You and I have had deep talks about your atheism. I don't care. And I don't come off as combative. Like, we just talk about it, whatever. We laugh at the same jokes.
Yeah.
We just did the Jesus thing. Like, I'm great. I don't care. So, like, back to Jeff. Like, dude, I don't think your therapist cares. If they do, if you ever share something that is significantly bothersome to the clinician, either they will consult with other therapists and work it out themselves so they can best serve you, and you'll never hear about it, or they will tell you about it. And they'll say, well, we don't agree on that. You know, and I know therapists that do. I actually don't agree with their opinion, but there's therapists that believe that therapy should be a place for social justice. And so they believe that if you tell them that you voted for Donald Trump, it now becomes part of their job to, like, help you understand that Trump's a racist or something like that.
Really?
Oh, buddy. I talk to therapists all the time that absolutely believe that is part.
Wow, I don't
that
know
is as
anybody
much
that
a
does
treatment
that.
goal as dealing with the presenting problem. Yep, because they call it systemic prejudice or systemic, injustices, and that part of the therapeutic process needs to be to relieve you of those perspectives, which you and I, we're non-directive therapists, so I think both of us would believe that's unethical, like you should not do that. But, I've met people that do. So it's not beyond my conception that he could bump into a therapist that he tells them that he's an atheist and that they feel the need to talk about that, almost to help him through it. Like, I'll bet that person exists.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
But if they worked for me, I'd fire them.
Right.
Like, that's not the therapist I want. So anyway, Jeff, I'm sure you're lovely, and I'm sure everybody loves you.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's pray. I do that to this one guy I've got. He gets a kick out of it. He's a former Christian, and so we relate to each other because we both kind of came from the same culture. But now he's like absolutely affirmed atheist, and I'm great with it. I don't care. And so like we joke all the time, just like you and I do. And at the end of every session, because he grew up in the church, I'll pull that on him. Like, I do it every once in a while. That way it doesn't get old. But every once in a while I'll go, anyway, let's pray. And I'll start to lean over, and he does it by instinct. And he goes, God damn it, Jim. He gets so pissed. And he's like, you got me again.
I'll bet that joke gets better every time.
He loves it. People love Jim's religious jokes.
All right, so now it's time for announcements, apologies, and Patreon.
I don't have a lot of official apologies. Cool. I'd like to apologize to the meth alligators. I don't know if you heard about this.
I saw that.
In Tennessee, they've told people to stop flushing their drugs because the alligators are getting high on meth.
That's what the world needs.
I made a joke at their expense. I just made it about reptile rehabs, and you know what? That was disrespectful, alligators. I should have appreciated that addiction is a disease.
I'd watch that movie.
You deserve help as much as ever. Oh, meth alligators?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, dude.
Why is it not already exists?
Why would meth alligators?
Why would we not?
Oh, I'd watch it on A&E. Yeah. That'd be fantastic. So I need to apologize for that. I guess I need to apologize to Florida for claiming that Floridians are primitive cavemen because of the story about the Florida man who threw his child into the ocean off the pier to teach him how to swim.
Yeah, I didn't see what the problem with that was. That's how we do it in Iowa.
Is that how you do it in Iowa? If you had an ocean, you would throw children into it?
Lakes and rivers. That's
you just throw them in there? That's how you guys make peace?
Yeah.
Whatever. Anyway. So, those are my big ones. The last one, I'd like to apologize to NASA. Recent findings came out that they had discovered that inside of the skin of grapes and wine, there is antioxidants, which will be pivotal to our astronauts surviving long-term in space if they ever do a flight to Mars. And I basically just said, so great. So in 50 years since landing on the moon, the greatest scientific advancement NASA has is get the astronauts drunk. Fantastic. You've done other things, NASA. I'm sorry. I was just bitter. I want to go back to the moon.
Yeah, I'm glad you apologized to NASA because that hurt NASA and all of America.
And Jim, why do you hate America?
Yeah, why now? This week, out of all weeks,
of all
50th
weeks,
anniversary.
Have you no reverence?
Yeah.
Anyway,
and
I'm the one who's the space pen stories. Damn it! I know all about the stupid NASA. Anyway,
I don't think we have any new THERAPALs this week, do we?
Nope. People are wising up.
Yeah.
Or THERAPODs.
No.
So get on it, listeners.
And we especially want to thank our bosses, the Elite Eight and mysterious and shrouded Illuminati members of our fan club, the TheraProducers. Thank you to Smitty Scoop, Jake Schneider, Robert Brownie Jr., Ment, Chairman of the Board, Kayla Lansbury, David Data Scoop Violon, Judy Schneider, Nathan's Hot Dog Scoop, Dr. Ben Don, and ex-officio board member Elio Derrick.
And if you'd like to hear this episode uncut and unedited and enjoy our spontaneous side projects, which never seem to last, including our book club, which didn't last, go to patreon.com.
We're going to do it still.
You're just hanging on to
No, we are.
We're doing it. That's just bold determination. You can go to patreon.com/therapy, and thank you for supporting mental health. That's all the time that we've got for this week's session. We want to thank our landlords, the Ice Cream Social Podcast, and thanks to those of you who contributed to our show today. We really appreciate it. Remember, pod therapy isn't something you should keep all to yourself. Share this episode by opening up the description in your podcast app and copying and pasting the link provided into your social media. Don't forget, you can find us at facebook.com/podtherapy, on Twitter at PodTherapyGuys, and at patreon.com/therapy.
If you want to submit a question to the show, ask anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. I'm Nick Tanchman.
I'm one small step for a man and one giant leap.
Thanks, and we'll see you for your appointment next week.